Last video, I talked about the Lucanians, an Oscan-speaking people from southern Italy. While in their own right, they are one of the most important players in the region, the Lucanians also gave birth to another vitally important culture, the Bruttii, who inhabited much of what is now modern-day Calabria. While we often think of these ancient Italian peoples as static entities, destined to be absorbed into Rome when the time comes, this is very much not the case when it comes to the Bruttii and this region of Italy as a whole. The original Italian people of the region were the Onotrians, but in the early 8th century BC, Greek colonies began to pop up along the coast. The most important of these cities were those of Croton, Locri, Caulonia, and Rhegium, although there are many others. The native Onotrians and the Greek colonists interacted for hundreds of years, and only in the 4th century BC, during the Lucanians' movement southward, was this balance upset. They conquered the Onotrians and even won victories over the Greeks from Thurii. Now holding much of the Calabrian interior, the Lucanians would eventually lose these gains during a revolt from the Bruttii in 356. But who were the Bruttii in relation to the Lucanians? This, like many things, is not precisely known, although there are many theories from various sources. Diodorus and Strabo, for example, say that they were Lucanian slaves who gained experience from raiding the Greeks of the region, eventually forming the Bruttii, which was the term for slave in the Oscan dialect. Marcus Justinus, anglicized to Justin, claims that they were just Lucanian youths who had joined the Italian locals to raid nearby settlements to make a hybrid culture, and that their name, Bruttii, comes from a woman named Bruttia who supported them during their revolt. The Bruttii themselves, however, claim that their name descends from a hero named Brutus, son of Hercules, although this figure is most likely a fabrication made to equate themselves to mythological heroes, much like the Greek tradition. Modern historians, on the other hand, believe that the name Bruttii existed before their revolt as a local subgroup of the wider Lucanian people, and only after the revolt did the term Bruttii become synonymous with rebel and slave. This modern interpretation implies that Justin may have been partially correct in that their regional identity may have come from Lucanians mixing with the native Italians of the region. In any case, when they gained their independence in 356 BC, they founded the Bruttian League and made their capital Consentia in the heart of Calabria due to its defensive position and high walls. The formation of this state occurred when many of the most powerful Greek city-states were fighting against one another, leaving them vulnerable to the relative newcomers to the region. The Bruttii then went on campaign and conquered many of these Greek city-states such as Temesa, Tyrrhena, and Hipponium, and they also launched attacks on great cities such as Croton and Thurii. This rapid conquest against Greek cities caused a major shift in Bruttian society when compared to their Lucanian progenitors: Hellenization and multiculturalism. While many other Italian people in southern Italy adopted the Greek alphabet, such as the Lucanians and the Campanians, the Bruttii are the only ones who actually adopted the Greek language, in addition to their traditional Oscan, making them bilingual. They even adopted the equipment of the Greek soldier, and their tombs were filled with many items of Greek origin, too many to be merely from looting. Greek religion was extremely influential, and due to their warlike nature, the Bruttii associated themselves with Hercules and made him a central figure in their foundation myth. Due to their rapid conquest, they did not even build temples, but they just used those of the conquered Greeks. To a lesser extent, gods such as Pan, Dionysus, Demeter, and Athena were all worshipped by the Bruttii, with very few non-Greek gods. All of this points to the Bruttii and the regional Greeks forming a sort of hybrid culture, but this did not stop the Bruttii from attacking their neighboring Greeks. Due to the growing Samnite Lucanian Bruttian threat in southern Italy, the major Greek city of Tarentum called upon King Alexander I of Epirus to assist the Greeks of the region. Despite winning their independence from the Lucanians but 25 years earlier, the Bruttii and the Lucanians allied themselves against this existential threat. After initial losses, the Italian alliance won at the Battle of Pandosia, killing the Epirot king. To contemporary writers and myself, this was an unexpected victory. Epirus was a major Mediterranean power with a lot of influence in the Greek world, while the Bruttii as a league existed for less than a generation. In addition to this, the Bruttii also fought back and forth wars against another major Greek power, Syracuse. This was predominantly against the tyrant Agathocles of Syracuse in the early 3rd century BC, and this marks the height of Bruttian power, as they could rival their neighbors, including their progenitors, the Lucanians. This hegemony would only begin to wane as Roman influence grew ever southward. Both the Bruttii and Lucanians found themselves in opposition to the rising Latin power, and in the year 282 BC, the Romans came to the aid of Thurii against the Bruttii, defeating them. This massive threat of Rome forced the Bruttii to ally themselves even with previous enemies. During the campaign of Pyrrhus of Epirus, the Bruttii were some of the first to send soldiers to fight alongside the Epirot king and his Tarentine allies, despite having been at war with them some 30 years earlier. They fought alongside him in the Battle of Asculum, winning many victories, but Pyrrhus's eventual defeat left the Bruttii and their Italian allies subject to the full might of a victorious Rome. The Bruttii suffered heavily and lost half of their Fora Sila, a major economic center, and were made into subjects of Rome. They were to provide allied soldiers to Rome, and during the First Punic War they did just that. But in the Second, after the major Roman defeat in the Battle of Cannae, they defected to Hannibal and the Carthaginians. During the end of Hannibal's Italian campaign, Bruttium acted as a headquarters for the Carthaginians, although he acted harshly against the locals because he largely distrusted them. Much like after the Pyrrhic War, when Hannibal departed Italy in 203 BC, he left the Bruttii populace to their fate, although a number of Bruttian soldiers would fight along the Carthaginians at the Battle of Zama. After the war, the Romans took massive punitive measures against the Bruttii and reduced them to a shadow of their former selves. Much of their land was directly incorporated into Rome, and the remaining Bruttii rump state were not reintegrated into Rome's system of alliances. Instead, it essentially became a servile state and were even barred from auxiliary military service. Many Bruttian settlements were abandoned, and the country was too weak to join other Italian peoples in the social war against Rome. Later, Rome founded many colonies in the region, and expanded the Via Papilia, a road which connected Rome itself to the toe of Italy in Rhegium. This growth of Roman population meant that the Bruttii and the region as a whole were eventually assimilated into Rome, and they were only granted citizenship in the early 1st century BC, much later than the rest of Italy. So while the Bruttii only existed as a unique cultural identity for around 300 years, they had a massive impact on the surrounding region. Due to their expansion, they reduced the importance of the Calabrian Greeks and shifted Greek colonial power to other centers such as Tarentum and Syracuse. They changed the relationship between Epirus and Italy, at first by killing their king, Alexander I, and later by allying with Pyrrhus against Rome. They played a critical role in the Second Punic War as a base of operation for Hannibal. But all would end, much like the Lucanians, a slow degradation and eventual integration by Rome. While I have equated the Lucanians and the Bruttii a lot in this video, I would just like to point out that the Bruttii are just the Lucanians but turned up to 11. Whereas the Lucanians expanded against their Greek neighbors slowly and via cultural osmosis for the most part, the Bruttii did so rapidly through brutal war. This caused the Lucanians to take on many aspects of Greek society, such as their alphabet, but the Bruttii actually adopted the Greek language in addition to their own, and their soldiers were often indistinguishable from those of their Greek counterparts. While the Lucanians were a loose confederation before the Romans, the Bruttii were more united and practiced Hellenic-style government. The Lucanians were great warriors, but the Bruttii were actively conquering cities hundreds of years old in its infancy. The Lucanian culture after the Second Punic War was forced to erode, but the Brettii were subject to the harshest of punishments by the Romans, and the land became desolate, not even able to muster enough support to fight against Rome during the Social War. So while they are both similar, the Bruttii can be classified as much more intense than their northern neighbors. But after the fall of the Bruttii, their land, now under direct control of the Romans, was a hotspot for Roman colonization and immigration. Those who moved to Bruttium did so for its lush wilderness in the Sela forest, which was in stark contrast to the fertile plains of Campania. Although the region was turned into a Roman backwater, it returned to a state of relative tranquility, which had not been seen since before the Greek colonization over 6 centuries ago. So although the Bruttii were relatively short-lived, I found this period to be extremely fascinating, and I hope you did too. Thank you.